New legislation has been introduced. It is a bipartisan effort. Bipartisan. One senator from Mississippi, who's a Republican, and another senator from Connecticut, who's a Democrat, have introduced the Amateur Radio Preparedness Act of 2024. This could be really, really good news for amateur radio operators who live in homeowners associations. Let's check this out real quick. I've seen some news articles about this. I got a couple of emails about it. I have yet to see what the ARRL may or may not have to say on it. So I've reached out, sent some email inquiries to some contacts at the ARRL and said, can you comment on this? But I wanted to get this in front of you guys real quick. This is a press release that was released on February 14th on Valentine's Day, 4 days ago at the time of this recording. Okay, so this is Senator Wicker and Blumenthal introduced Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act. Legislation helps increase communications options during a natural disaster. Okay, so Washington. U.S. Senators Roger Wicker and Richard Blumenthal introduced legislation to give amateur radio operators the right to install their antennas and serve their community. Homeowner association rules prevent amateur radio operators from installing outdoor antennas on residential properties, even though this communication method is proven to be essential in emergencies during or natural disasters such as hurricanes in states like Mississippi and Connecticut. A quote, because communication during natural disasters is often hindered, we should be making every attempt to give folks more options. Reliable access can make the difference between life and death in an emergency. Our legislation removes roadblocks for amateur radio operators looking to help their friends, families, and neighbors, Senator Wicker said. Another quote from Senator Blumenthal, our measure will help clarify the rules so ham radio enthusiasts can successfully continue their communications in the face of emergency or crisis. They help provide vital and life-saving information that allow listeners to properly and safely respond, but prohibitive homeowners association rules and confusing approval processes for installing antennas have been an unnecessary impediment, Blumenthal said. The Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act resolves these bottlenecks and ensures that radio operators can function successfully. Okay, so, and then this article, in fact, you know what, let me read the rest of this article. I got several links to share with you. I'm going to tell you what I think about this so far, but I'm going to be curious to watch this as it unfolds also. So background here, the Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act of 2024, this was just introduced. When they introduced this act in I think it was in middle of 2023, they said that it would expire in Congress and they would reintroduce it in 2024, and presumably this is the legislation they were talking about back then. So this has kind of been a building process for a while. It would require homeowner associations to accommodate the needs of amateur radio operators by limiting the scenarios on which they can ban, prevent, and require the approval of installation or use of amateur radio antennas. Homeowners associations have often prevented installation and use through private land restrictions, potentially hindering access to emergency communications. Among other provisions, this legislation would prohibit homeowner association rules that would prevent or ban amateur radio antennas, clarify the approval process for installing amateur radio antennas, and give amateur radio operators a private right of action. The Amateur Radio Preparedness Act of 2024 has been endorsed by the ARRL. Full text can be found right here. So I'm going to go here and open that up, and I'm going to show you that in a second. Now, let me say this about HOAs, okay? Don't live in an HOA. The end. See you. Goodbye. I mean, that's sometimes you can't help it, and I know that I have received messages and comments from several of you who got into ham radio after you had already moved into a house with an HOA and went to try to put up an antenna, and they tell you you can't do it. Okay, here's my take on it. Now, I could make a whole hour-long video about this. I've heard good and bad points on both sides of the argument. Okay, but here's my stance on it, just so we're on the same page here. I don't think the government, local government, city, county, I don't think your homeowners association should be telling you what to do with your own property. Okay, now, I've said that before, and some people say, well, yeah, but if you don't have an HOA, you're going to end up with boats sitting in the yard, not even on a trailer, broken down cars all over the place, car parks, weeds, people don't take care of their lawn. I'm here to tell you, I have lived in my neighborhood right here where I'm recording this video right now is in Grapevine, Texas. I've lived in this house for more than 20 years. We do not have a homeowners association. We have a homeowners association that's voluntary. We pay $75, it's either $75 or $85. I think it's gone up. And when we moved in, it was like $70. I think now it's like $85 a year. $85 a year to maintain a local park and the retaining wall that goes around the neighborhood. And it is voluntary. I do not have to pay that $85 if I don't want to. My wife and I always pay it because Homeowners Association does a good job of taking care of the local facilities, the park and whatnot. But there are no houses in this neighborhood where the weeds and the lawn have gotten completely out of care, windows are broken, abandoned houses, cars in the yard, boats in the yard. It doesn't happen. That doesn't happen around here. Now, that's not to say it could never happen, but to say that every time you get rid of a homeowners association, you're going to have the token redneck move in with broken down cars and boats in his lawn who never mows his grass is untrue. I am living proof that actually does not happen, because here in my neighborhood, it never has. 20 plus years of being in this neighborhood, it's never happened. Having said that, I can kind of see from a little bit why you'd want an HOA in some instances, because that is a possibility that, neighbors just don't take care of their own yards. But at the same time, it's their property. If you want rights to your property, you got to give that guy next door who doesn't mow his grass often enough, you got to give him rights to his own property. And as a general rule, I think people should have the rights to their own property, unless the homeowners association is going to come in and say, you know what, we're going to pay half of your property taxes every year so we can tell you what color to paint your house. Well, okay. If you're going to sign off on that, then great. But generally speaking, they offer zero support for your mortgage, your insurance, and your property taxes. And they want to tell you what color to paint your house and how high to have your fence, or at least a lot of them do. Go away. Get the hell out of here. I'm not living in a neighborhood like that, and I don't think you should either. So enough of that soapbox, and that's my very brief view and viewpoint and opinion on homeowners associations in general. Now, if we link to this article here, down at the bottom it says the full text of the legislation can be found here, and it opens up this page right here, and these are poorly scanned documents, but there's 14 pages in this bunch of legalese lawyer talk. Okay, and I read through the first few pages, and quite frankly, I'm like, I don't know what the heck this is saying. Okay, to amend the Communications Act of 1934 to prohibit the applications of certain private land use restrictions to amateur radio stations and antennas for other purposes. Okay, and it starts out here. Let me read just a short paragraphs of this to you, and I'll show you what I'm talking about with this legalese. Be it enacted. Who the freak talks that way? Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act. Section 2, findings. Congress finds the following. More than 770,000 amateur radio operators in the United States are licensed by the Federal Communications Commission, in this section referred to as the Commission, in amateur radio services, and by treaty, amateur operators licensed by other countries are authorized to operate within the United States. Correct. 2. Amateur radio, in addition to providing life-saving emergency communications at no cost to taxpayers, provides a fertile ground for technical self-training and modern telecommunications, electronics technology, and emergency communications techniques and protocols. Okay, so far that's actually not too bad. There is a strong federal interest in the effective performance of amateur stations established at the residences of amateur operators. Among other reasons, when an emergency arises, it can be too late and too dangerous to erect an effective antenna. However, amateur stations have been shown to be frequently and increasingly precluded by an unreasonable private land use restrictions, including restrictive covenants. And then it goes on. That's like section 4. It goes on with 7 sections, or 7 paragraphs in that section, and then another section, and I could read this whole thing to you, but instead I'm just going to link it to you guys. I don't want to read this whole thing to you. I don't think you want to listen to me. Some of this is worded kind of weird, but we'll see. Today's video is sponsored by PCBWay.com. If you need any 3D printing, professional grade, CNC machine printing, circuit board printing, if you have any circuit boards for projects that you want to build, any ideas that you want to have, PCBWay.com is a one-stop shop for all of the things I listed above and so much, much more. Head over to PCBWay.com. Their link is in the description below, and be sure to thank them for supporting this channel because they are sponsoring this video. Permissible restrictions. It has all these permissible restrictions down here, that kind of thing. There was an act that went in, I'm going to get that. I don't remember which one it was. There was an act or a bill that went in 2 or 3 years ago, and it never passed through Congress. It died on Capitol Hill, as they say. And I was talking to someone from the ARRL one time, and they're like, yeah, it wasn't worded very well. That wasn't a very good proposal, a very good act, or a very good bill, so we didn't really support it. According to this article, ARRL supports this. So again, I've reached out to my ARRL representative and I said, can you comment on this, something on the record? So we'll see what they have to say. Here's another article I found. Wicker bill removes roadblocks for amateur radio operators. So this is talking about Roger Wicker, Republican from Mississippi, recently unveiled bipartisan legislation that would smooth approval processes for amateur radio operators who provide important information to their communities, especially during emergencies. It kind of quotes what he said in that last article. The Center introduced the Amateur Radio Preparedness Act, S.3690, on January 30th, along with a co-sponsor, Richard Blumenthal. According to the summary of the bill, the legislation would prohibit homeowner association rules that prevent or ban amateur radio antennas on residential properties, clarify the approval process for installing amateur radio antennas, and give amateur radio operators a private... Okay, so that's kind of the same thing it said again. I got this link from Ham Radio Prep. They did a video about this, or they sent an email, and they did a video and an email, actually. And this is how you can contact your U.S. Senator to tell them you are in favor of supporting this legislation. So I will put links to all of this in the description below. So there you go. That is what's going on right now. Now, again, the parts of it that I read seem pretty... I'm not an attorney, and I don't speak legalese, and sometimes I read something and I'm like, well, what does that mean, though? Because it says that it is going to... These 3 bullet points on the wicker.senate.gov website, which is the first website I showed you. Clarify the approval process for installing amateur radio antennas. Okay, so if we clarify it, I mean, what does that mean? You're going to clarify the process, okay? And I believe that I believe that there should be restrictions, because I think you should put your antenna up correctly. If you're going to erect a 30 or 40 or 50-foot tower on your property, you need to make sure it's done correctly so that when a storm blows through, it doesn't blow down on your house or your neighbor's house or injure somebody. There needs to be protocols in place for how you plant a tower in the ground and how you guy it, or a freestanding tower, however that is. So there needs to be a little bit of restrictions in place. I get that. I would like to know what approval process for installing means, and give amateur radio operators a private right of action. I'd like clearer definition on what that means. So prohibit homeowner association rules that would prevent or ban amateur radio antennas. So prohibit HOAs from preventing antennas at all. I'm good with that. I'm just wondering what these other two, how they're defining a couple of these phrases, because it could be defined in a couple different ways. It could be a good thing. It could be a not good thing. So I don't really know. I want more clarity. I'm going to read through the whole thing myself, but I don't know if that really... I'd like someone with a law degree to read through this and tell me, no, this is a good thing, or no, this is not a good thing. I'm going to leave the link in the description below for you guys to contact your senators. I'm going to contact my senator and tell him I'm in favor of this after I clarify that I'm actually in favor of it. I think it's a good thing. I do. I think overall it's probably a good thing. I like the fact that it's bipartisan, 1 Republican and 1 Democrat senator. I think that's a good thing. There's not enough bipartisan acts or bills happening these days. Too many people arguing with one another about oftentimes stupid things. So I'm glad that it's bipartisan. I'm glad that they're looking back at this again. And I think that limiting restrictions on HOAs as a general rule is a good thing, because as a general rule, I don't like HOAs. I'd like to know what you guys have to say. If you've read through this already, or if you're going to read through this, you want to come back to this video and comment again. I'd like to know what you think. If there's anything in this act or this proposal that you think is ambiguous or maybe not good, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So do put a comment below. Let me know what you think. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll do a follow-up video to this video after I talk to some more people. I just found this the other day. I wanted to make a video up front so that we could kind of get the word out there and get the conversation flowing on that. So once I talk to a couple of my ARRL reps and a couple more people, I might make a follow-up video and see where we're at on that. So let me know what you think in the comments below, guys. Thanks for watching today.